The sirens drowned out the string quartet exactly 3 seconds before I was supposed to say I do. I froze, my bouquet trembling in my hands, and turned toward the source of the noise. A police cruiser was tearing across my perfectly manicured lawn, leaving deep, muddy ruts in the grass I had spent 6 months nurturing. And there she was, standing by the edge of the property line, arms crossed, wearing a smirk that could have curdled fresh milk. HOA. She wasn't looking at the police, she was looking right at me, mouthing words I could not hear over the wail of the siren, but I knew exactly what she was saying. Gotcha. To understand why a grown woman would call the emergency services on a wedding ceremony, you have to understand the geography of my life. 3 years ago, my fiance and I purchased the old Miller estate. It is a beautiful, sprawling 4 acres right on the edge of the lake. The key detail here, the detail that HOA could never quite wrap her head around, is that the Miller estate was built in 1950. The cookie-cutter subdivision that surrounds my property on 3 sides, however, was built in 2005. That subdivision is called Gilded Shores, and it is ruled with an iron fist by the Gilded Shores Homeowners Association, and the president of that association, the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, is HOA. Our property is what real estate agents call a donut hole. We are surrounded by the HOA, but we are not part of it. We are legally, physically, and spiritually independent. We do not pay their fees, we do not follow their color palette guidelines, and we certainly do not answer to HOA. But that fact never stopped her from trying. The war began the day we moved in. The moving truck had barely put the ramp down when I heard the click-clack of heels on my driveway. I walked out to find a woman standing there, inspecting the license plate of the moving van. She held a clipboard like a weapon. She wore a pastel yellow blazer that looked expensive but uncomfortable, and her hair was sprayed into a helmet that could withstand a hurricane. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that usually precedes an insult. "Commercial vehicles are not permitted in Gilded Shores after 5 in the afternoon. You need to move this eyesore immediately." I smiled, wiped the dust off my hands, and extended one to her. "Hi, I am the new owner. You must be from next door. And actually, this isn't Gilded Shores. This is the Miller property. We are independent." HOA did not shake my hand. She looked at it as if it were covered in slime. "I know where the lines are," she snapped, "and your driveway connects to our private road, which makes you subject to our community standards regarding visual nuisances." That was a lie, by the way. Our driveway connects to the county road. I pointed that out. Ha narrowed her eyes. Her nostrils flared slightly. "I will be checking with the city planner," she said. "We cannot have people bringing down our property values with unregulated chaos. My name is Ha, Mrs. Ha to you, and I will be watching." She spun around and marched back to her house, which overlooks our backyard. That was the first day. Over the next 3 years, Ha became the background radiation of our lives. When we painted our shutters a deep navy blue, Ha sent a certified letter claiming the shade was aggressive and clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. I framed the letter and hung it in the guest bathroom. When we hosted a barbecue for the 4th of July, Ha stood on her balcony with a decibel meter, waiting for us to laugh too loudly. We didn't break any noise ordinances, so she called the fire department to report an uncontrolled blaze because of the smoke from our grill. But nothing, and I mean nothing, triggered Ha more than the wedding. When Mark proposed down by the dock, it was romantic and perfect. We decided immediately that we wanted the wedding right there in the backyard. It was free, it was beautiful, and it was ours. We spent $10,000 on landscaping alone. We brought in hydrangeas, installed a stone archway, and rented a massive white tent just in case of rain. The activity drove Ha insane. Every time a delivery truck arrived with chairs or tables, Ha was there at the property line. She would stand there with her phone out, filming the workers. One afternoon, my florist, a sweet woman named Sarah, came to me in tears. She told me that a woman in a yellow blazer had accosted her at the gate and told her that she needed a commercial permit to operate a business in a residential zone. Ha had threatened to have Sarah's van towed if she didn't leave within 10 minutes. I saw red. I marched down the driveway to where Ha was lurking behind a hedge. "Ha," I said, keeping my voice low and dangerous. "If you harass my vendors one more time, I will file a restraining order for harassment. This is private property. You have no jurisdiction here." Ha laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "You are disrupting the peace," she said. You are turning this neighborhood into a circus. A wedding here with hundreds of strangers wandering around? It is a security risk. The board has discussed it, and we are formally objecting. You can object to the moon and stars for all I care, I told her. The wedding is happening. The week of the wedding was a nightmare of logistics, but the one bright spot was that Ha seemed to have retreated. We didn't see her. The curtains in her house remained drawn. I foolishly thought that maybe, just maybe, she had realized she couldn't win this one. I thought she had accepted defeat. I should have known better. Hua doesn't accept defeat. She just plans better ambushes. The morning of the wedding was pristine. The lake was like glass, reflecting the blue sky. The temperature was 72 degrees. It was the kind of day brides pray for. My bridesmaids and I were in the master suite getting our hair and makeup done. We were drinking mimosas and laughing. Everything felt safe. The chaos of the planning was over, and now it was just about the celebration. Around 11 in the morning, my wedding planner, David, came up to the room. He looked pale. "We have a situation," he said. I put down my glass. "What is it?" "There is a woman," David said. "She is standing at the end of the driveway with a clipboard. She is stopping the guests' cars as they try to turn in. She is telling them the event has been canceled due to a sewage leak." I stood up so fast my chair fell over. "Hua!" I ran to the window. Sure enough, down at the end of the long driveway, I could see a small figure in a bright pink pantsuit standing in the middle of the road. She was waving her arms at a sedan that was trying to turn in. "I am going down there," I said, grabbing my robe. "No," David said, blocking my path. "You are the bride. You do not engage with the crazy neighbor on your wedding day. I will handle it. I will call the non-emergency line and have an officer come out to direct traffic. You just relax." I tried to relax, but the image of Hua guarding my driveway like a troll under a bridge was burned into my mind. David handled it though. He went down there, and whatever he said made Hua retreat back to her manicured lawn. The guests started arriving. The music started playing. The ceremony area filled up with 200 of our friends and family. It looked magical. I put on my dress. It was a vintage lace gown that had belonged to my grandmother. I felt beautiful. My father was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "You look ready to take on the world." "I am just ready to marry Mark," I said. We walked out of the house and toward the aisle. The string quartet began playing Canon in D. Everyone stood up. I saw Mark waiting for me under the stone archway, looking handsome and nervous. The lake sparkled behind him. For a moment, the world narrowed down to just him and me. I forgot about the stress. I forgot about the budget. And I definitely forgot about Hua. The ceremony was beautiful. The officiant spoke about love and patience. We exchanged rings. The air was still and sacred. The officiant took a breath and prepared to pronounce us husband and wife. And that is when the wailing started. It started distant, a low whine, but it grew louder rapidly. Heads started to turn. People began to whisper. The officiant paused, looking confused. Then the sound became deafening. Blue and red lights flashed against the white fabric of the tent. A police cruiser slammed on its brakes right on the edge of the seating area. 2 officers stepped out, looking serious and tense. They had their hands hovering near their belts. And then I saw her, Hoa. She had emerged from the side of her house, walking triumphantly toward the police officers. She wasn't wearing her pink pantsuit anymore. She had changed into a black dress, as if she were attending a funeral. She pointed a long acrylic fingernail right at Mark. "Officer!" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the stunned silence of the wedding guests. "Officer, thank God you are here! That is him! That is the man running the illegal drug operation!" The entire wedding party gasped. My mouth fell open. I looked at Mark, who looked like he had been slapped. One of the officers walked onto the aisle runner. He looked at Mark, then at me, then at the terrified guests. "Sir, ma'am, I am going to need everyone to stay where they are," he boomed. We received a 911 call regarding a large-scale distribution of narcotics and weapons at this address, involving a hostage situation. "Hostage situation?" I whispered. Hoa marched up behind the officer, her face flushed with victory. She looked at me, and her eyes were gleaming with pure malice.
"Look at them, officer," she yelled. "They are trying to cover it up with a fake party. I told you, I have been watching them for years. They have trucks coming in and out at all hours. They are moving product. And I saw guns. I saw them carrying rifles into that tent." She was referring, I realized with a sick jolt, to the tent poles my cousins had carried in yesterday. The officer held up a hand to silence her. "Ma'am, stay back." He turned to Mark. "Sir, step away from the altar. Put your hands where I can see them." This cannot be happening, I thought. This is a nightmare. I am going to wake up in my bed. But it wasn't a dream. Hoa stood there, practically vibrating with excitement. She had escalated from noise complaints to swatting us. She had called in a fake hostage and drug situation to ruin my wedding. She crossed her arms, looking at the ruin she had caused. The crying flower girl, the stunned grandparents, the terrified groom. She looked at me and smiled that same tight, evil smile from the first day we met. "You should have moved the van," she mouthed. Something inside me snapped. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. I looked at the officer, then I looked at Hoa.
I took a step forward, ignoring the officer's command to stay back. "Officer," I said, my voice shaking not with fear but with fury. "This woman is lying. This is a wedding, and you are currently trespassing on private property based on a false report filed by a woman who has been harassing us for 3 years." Hoa laughed. "A false report? I saw the guns, I saw the drugs, search them, search the presents. I bet the cocaine is in the wedding cake." The second officer, who had been scanning the crowd, looked at the calm, bewildered faces of my elderly aunts and the children hiding behind their parents' legs. He looked at the flowers. He looked at the string quartet, who were holding their instruments like shields. He lowered his hand from his belt. "Bob," he said to his partner, "this is a wedding." "It is a front," Hoa screamed. She stomped her foot. "Do your job. Arrest them." I looked at Hoa. I took a deep breath. I walked past the officer, right up to the property line where Hoa was standing. She flinched, expecting me to hit her. I didn't. I just looked her dead in the eye. "Hoa," I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "you just committed a felony, filing a false police report, misuse of emergency services. And since you just admitted to the officers that you have been watching us for years, I think we can add stalking to the list." Hoa's smile faltered. Her eyes darted to the police officers. They weren't looking at Mark anymore. They were looking at her. And that is when I played my ace. I turned to the officer. "Officer, this woman is currently standing on my land. I have a land survey in the house that proves the property line is actually 10 feet past where she is standing. I am formally requesting that you remove this trespasser from my wedding." Hoa froze. She looked down at her feet. She looked at the grass. She looked back at her own house, then at the officers. "That is ridiculous," she stammered, her voice losing its power. "I am the HOA president. I have right of way." The officer, the one named Bob, walked over. He looked annoyed, very annoyed. He looked at the crying flower girl, then he looked at Hoa. "Ma'am," he said, his voice dropping an octave, "did you see weapons or did you see tent poles?" Hoa stuttered. Well, they looked like. "Did you see drugs or did you see wedding favors? I have a suspicion." "Ma'am," the officer said, reaching for his handcuffs, "you called 911 and reported an active hostage situation. Do you know how many units are rolling towards this address right now? Do you know how much danger you put these people in?" Hoa's face went from red to pale white in the span of a second. She took a step back. I was just being a concerned citizen." I stepped closer. "You were being Hoa," I said. "And you are done." The officer took Hoa's arm. "Mrs. Hoa, turn around and place your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for filing a false report and misuse of the 911 system." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, from the back of the wedding crowd, my cousin Mike started to clap. Then my dad joined in, then the whole wedding party. As the officer clicked the handcuffs onto Hoa's wrists, a roar of applause erupted from the guests. Hoa looked around wildly, her eyes wide with shock. She wasn't the hero. She wasn't the powerful president. She was just a bitter woman in a funeral dress getting arrested at a wedding. But the story doesn't end there. Because what we found out later, what came out during the court case, was so much worse than just a false police report. It turns out Hoa had been busy doing a lot more than just watching us. The wedding night was a blur of adrenaline and champagne, but the real hangover hit the next morning, and it wasn't from the alcohol. It was from the phone call we received from Detective Miller at 8 o'clock in the morning. He asked us to come down to the precinct immediately. He said it was regarding HOA and that it was sensitive. Mark and I looked at each other, drinking coffee in our kitchen, and we both had the same thought. What else could she possibly have done? She was already in a cell. We thought it was over. We were wrong. When we arrived at the station, HOA was nowhere to be seen. Detective Miller led us into a small interview room and placed a heavy cardboard box on the table. He looked tired. He told us that when they processed HOA, they confiscated her phone. Being the arrogant genius that she is, HOA hadn't locked it. She had actually encouraged the officers to look through it because she insisted it contained proof of our drug empire. She wanted them to see the photos she had taken of the drug mules and the weapons. The detective opened the box and pulled out a stack of printed photos. He slid them across the table. My blood ran cold. The photos weren't just from the property line. There were photos of us eating dinner in our dining room, taken from a high angle. There were photos of me gardening in the backyard, taken from inside the bushes. There were photos of our mail, opened and laid out on a table. I asked the detective where these came from. He told us that based on the photos in her phone, they had obtained a warrant to search HOA's property for surveillance equipment that violated privacy laws. What they found in her house was not just a nosy neighbor's setup, it was a command center. HOA had transformed her guest bedroom into what the police were calling the war room. One entire wall was covered in monitors. She had 4 cameras pointed at her own driveway, which is normal, but she had 12 cameras pointed at our property. And the terrifying part was that she hadn't just filmed us from her house. She had trespassed onto our land in the middle of the night and installed trail cams in our trees. She had disguised a camera as a birdhouse and nailed it to the oak tree right outside our master bedroom window. I felt sick. I remembered undressing with the curtains open, thinking I was safe in the privacy of my own 4 acres. HOA had been watching. She had been recording. And she had been cataloging everything in a series of binders lined up on a shelf. The detective handed me one of the binders. The label on the spine read, "The Miller Occupation, Year 3. I opened it. It was madness. Pure, distilled insanity. HOA had logged every single visitor we had for 3 years.
She had written down license plate numbers, arrival times, and departure times. She had notes in the margins like suspicious package, which was definitely just an Amazon delivery, and illicit gathering, which was my book club. But the obsession went deeper than just surveillance. The detective pulled out a separate file folder. This one looked official. It had the county seal on it. Inside were documents that looked like property deeds and zoning maps. The detective explained that HOA had been forging documents. She had taken the official plat map of the Gilded Shores subdivision and digitally altered it to include our donut hole property as part of the HOA's common area. She had drafted fake liens against our home for $50,000 in unpaid HOA fines, fines we didn't owe because we aren't in the HOA. Her plan, according to a journal they found in her desk, was to file these liens with the county clerk's office, hoping that a clerical error would let them slip through. Once the liens were recorded, she planned to wait until they accrued enough interest and penalties, and then she was going to petition the court to foreclose on our house to pay the debt. She literally wanted to steal our 4-acre lakefront estate using Microsoft Paint in sheer audacity. The detective told us that HOA was currently being held without bail because the scope of her crimes had escalated from filing a false report to stalking, trespassing, forgery, and attempted grand larceny. He asked if we wanted to see her. He said she was demanding to speak to the illegal squatters, which was her pet name for us. Mark said no immediately. He wanted to go home and burn the birdhouse camera. But I paused. I needed to see her. I needed to understand how a human being could twist their mind into this kind of pretzel. I told the detective I wanted 5 minutes. They led me to an interrogation room with a 2-way mirror. HOA was sitting at a metal table. She was still wearing the black funeral dress from the wedding, but it was wrinkled now. Her hair, usually a perfect helm, was deflated on one side. She looked small. But when the door opened and she saw me, that familiar sneer returned instantly. She didn't look ashamed. She looked annoyed, like she was waiting for a slow waiter to bring her the check. "You," she said, pointing a finger at me.
You have a lot of nerve showing up here after the stunt you pulled yesterday. I sat down across her. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I just let the silence stretch until she started to fidget. HOA, I said calmly. They found the cameras. They found the binders. They found the fake deeds. HOA rolled her eyes. It is called Neighborhood Watch, she huffed. It is a volunteer position. I am the president.
It is my duty to document code violations. And as for the maps, I was simply correcting a clerical error. The Miller estate was always intended to be part of Gilded Shores. Your existence there is a zoning oversight. I leaned forward. You put a camera in a birdhouse outside my bedroom window, Ha. That is not neighborhood watch. That is a felony. You are looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. Ha laughed. It was a delusional, high-pitched sound. Prison for me? Do you know who my husband is? Do you know who I am? I am the one who keeps property values up. The police will realize their mistake. They will realize that you are the criminals running an unlicensed commercial venue in a residential zone. I am the victim here. She slammed her hand on the table. It was incredible. Even in handcuffs, bolted to the floor of a police station, she truly believed she was the manager of the universe. She believed that her desire to control our property superseded the law, the Constitution, and reality itself. I stood up. I realized then that there was no reasoning with her. Ha wasn't just mean, she was broken. Her entitlement had eaten her brain like a parasite. I am going to sue you for everything you own, Ha, I said. I am going to take your house, I am going to take your savings, and I am going to use that money to build a 10-foot privacy wall around my property so I never have to look at your face again. Ha gasped. You can't do that. The HOA guidelines strictly prohibit walls over 6 feet. I walked to the door. I am not in the HOA, Ha, I said, and neither are you anymore. I left the room while she was still screaming about height restrictions and color palettes. The legal battle that followed was long, expensive, and incredibly satisfying. The district attorney had a field day with the evidence. It turned out we weren't the only victims. Ha had been terrorizing the actual members of Gilded Shores for years. She had fined a family $3,000 for having a non-compliant breed of dog. She had forced an elderly woman to repaint her front door 5 times in 1 month because the shade of red wasn't joyful enough. When the trial finally started, the courtroom was packed. It wasn't just our friends and family, it was half the neighborhood. People had taken off work to see Ha face justice. It was like the Super Bowl of petty suburban revenge. Ha's defense lawyer was a sweaty man who looked like he regretted every life choice that had led him to this moment. His entire defense strategy was that Ha was a passionate community leader who cared too much. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, destroyed that defense in about 20 minutes. She played the 911 call from the wedding.
She showed the jury the zoomed-in photos of my bedroom. She showed the forged liens. But the highlight, the moment that made the local news, was when Ha took the stand. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but Ha insisted. She wanted to tell her side of the story. She wanted to explain to the jury why she was right. She sat in the witness box, adjusted the microphone, and looked at the jury with a pitying smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "you have to understand. These people," she gestured vaguely at Mark and me, "they simply do not fit the aesthetic." The courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked confused. "Excuse me?" the judge asked. "The aesthetic," Ha repeated, as if speaking to a slow child. "Gilded Shores is a lifestyle. It is a brand. We cultivate an atmosphere of exclusive tranquility. When these two moved into the donut hole, they brought chaos, blue shutters, wildflowers instead of manicured roses, and then the wedding. Do you know they played Canon in D? It is so cliché. It lowers the tone of the entire zip code. I had to intervene. It was my fiduciary duty." The prosecutor stood up. "Mrs. Ha, are you admitting that you called in a fake hostage situation because you didn't like the song choice at their wedding?" Ha scoffed. "It wasn't just the song, it was the principle. They were having fun wrong. They were celebrating in a way that I had not approved. And regarding the drugs, well, I assumed they were on drugs. Who else would plant hydrangeas in direct sunlight? It is erratic behavior." You could hear a pin drop. She had just confessed to everything, under oath,
because she honestly thought the jury would agree that planting hydrangeas in the sun was a crime worthy of a SWAT team. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. They came back with a guilty verdict on all counts: filing a false police report, misuse of emergency services, stalking, trespassing, and forgery. The judge sentenced Ha to 3 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. But the best part of the sentence was the restraining order. The judge issued a permanent order barring Ha from coming within 500 feet of us or our property. Since her house was within 50 feet of our property line, she was effectively banned from her own home. She had to sell. The for sale sign went up in Ha's yard 2 weeks later, and guess who bought it? We didn't buy it to live in. We didn't buy it to rent out. We bought it for the sheer, unadulterated pleasure of painting it. We closed on the house last month. The very next day, Mark and I went over there with 5 gallons of paint. We didn't choose a color from the Gilded Shores approved palette. We didn't choose beige or eggshell or whisper gray.
We painted Ha's former castle a bright neon highlighter pink. The HOA board sent us a letter immediately, of course. They threatened fines, they threatened legal action. They cited Section 4, Paragraph 2 of the bylaws. But here is the beautiful thing. When we bought Ha's house, we also bought the adjacent strip of land that connected her driveway to the county road. We did a little lot line adjustment. We legally merged Ha's old lot with our independent Miller estate. The house that Ha built, the throne from which she ruled, is no longer part of Gilded Shores. It is now part of the Miller Donut Hole. It is private property, and on my private property, I can paint my house whatever color I want. We turned Ha's war room into a nursery. We are expecting our first baby in the spring. Sometimes when I am in there painting the walls a soft, non-aggressive yellow, I look out the window at the spot where the birdhouse camera used to be. I think about Ha, sitting in a beige cell, wearing a beige uniform, living in a world where she controls absolutely nothing. And I smile. Because in the end, Ha was right about one thing. Property values are important. But the value of a home isn't determined by the color of the shutters or the height of the grass. It is determined by the peace you feel when you walk through the door. And now that Ha is gone, Gilded Shores is finally, truly peaceful. The neighbors wave to us now. The lady with the non-compliant dog walks him past our house every morning. We are planning a block party for next month. Everyone is invited, even the HOA board members. We are going to have a barbecue. We are going to play loud music. And if anyone has a problem with it, they can take it up with the owner of the bright pink house at the end of the lane. That is the story of how a Karen tried to ruin my wedding and ended up buying me a guest house. It just goes to show that you should never underestimate a bride on her wedding day, and you should definitely never, ever try to out-crazy a woman who has the law, a land survey, and a very good lawyer on her side. Now, if you will excuse me, I have some hydrangeas to plant. In direct sunlight.
I thought the story was over. I really, truly thought that painting Hoa's house pink and turning her war room into a nursery was the period at the end of the sentence. I thought the credits were rolling. I was naive. I forgot the golden rule of dealing with a narcissist. They do not stop. They do not reflect. They only reload. It had been exactly 30 days since we closed on the Hoa house. The ink was dry, the deed was recorded, the paint was curing in the sun. I was out in the front yard, kneeling in the dirt, finally planting those hydrangeas in the direct sunlight, just to spite the ghost of her memory. The air was quiet. No sirens, no yelling, just the sound of birds and the wind in the trees. Then I heard it. It wasn't a siren this time. It was the sound of a heavy diesel engine idling, a low, grinding rumble that vibrated through the soles of my shoes. I stood up, wiping the soil from my hands, and looked down the long driveway. A white van was parked right at the edge of the property line. Not a delivery truck, not a police cruiser. It was an unmarked white van with a ladder rack on top. And standing next to it, pointing a long, bony finger at my newly pink guest house, was a figure I never thought I would see again. Hoa. I blinked. I actually rubbed my eyes because my brain refused to process the visual data. Hoa was supposed to be in a state penitentiary. She was supposed to be wearing beige and eating cafeteria loaf. But there she was. She was wearing the same black funeral dress she had worn to ruin my wedding, but now it hung loosely on her frame.
Her hair was not the iron helmet of the past. It was frizzy and wild, escaping from a clip. But the eyes were the same. Those dark, shark-like eyes that saw the world only as things to be controlled or destroyed. She wasn't alone. A man in grease-stained coveralls was standing next to her, holding a large drill in a heavy red toolbox. HOA was gesturing violently at the front door of the pink house. My heart didn't race this time. It plummeted. It felt like a stone dropping into a well. The peace I had felt 5 minutes ago evaporated, replaced by a cold, heavy dread. I dropped my trowel and started walking down the driveway. "Excuse me," I shouted, my voice echoing off the trees. "Excuse me." HOA spun around. When she saw me, her face didn't register shame. It didn't register fear. It registered pure, unadulterated disgust. She looked at me like I was a stain on a carpet she had been meaning to clean. "You," she spat. The word came out like a curse. I stopped 10 feet away, keeping a safe distance. "HOA," I said, "what are you doing here? You are supposed to be in prison, and you have a restraining order. You are 500 feet inside the exclusion zone." HOA laughed.
It was a dry, cracking sound. Prison? You think you can keep me in a cage? My lawyer filed an emergency appeal this morning. I am out on bond pending a review of the judicial misconduct that occurred in that kangaroo court. She took a step toward me, and I saw it. Wrapped around her ankle, bulging beneath her black stockings, was a thick black plastic monitor, an ankle bracelet. She was on house arrest. "And I am not in the exclusion zone," she continued, her voice rising to that familiar screech. "I am at my home. The restraining order says I cannot approach your property. It does not say I cannot enter my own primary residence." She pointed at the pink house. I looked at the locksmith. He looked confused. He looked back and forth between the crazy woman in the funeral dress and me, the woman covered in gardening dirt. "Sir," I said to the locksmith, "this woman does not own this house. I own this house. I bought it 30 days ago. She is trespassing. If you touch that lock, you are committing a felony." The locksmith took a step back, lowering his drill. "Lady," he said to HOA, "you told me you lost your keys. You didn't say anything about a dispute." HOA whirled on him. "Do not listen to her. She is a squatter. She is a fraud. She tricked the court into a forced sale, but the appeal halts all property transfers. That is my house. Look at it. It is painted pink. Do you think I would paint my house pink? It is vandalism." She was screaming now, veins popping in her neck. "I need you to drill out the deadbolt so I can enter my premises and retrieve my belongings. Do your job." The locksmith shook his head. "No way, lady. I am out of here. This is a civil matter." He threw his drill into the back of the van and slammed the door. HOA shrieked at him, slapping the side of the van with her open palm as he reversed down the driveway. "Coward," she screamed. "You are useless. I will report you to the Better Business Bureau." The van sped away, leaving us alone in the silence. HOA turned back to me. Her chest was heaving. She looked deranged. "Give me the keys," she demanded, holding out her hand. "Give me the keys to my house, and I might consider dropping the charges for the vandalism you have done to the exterior." I stared at her in disbelief. The sheer magnitude of her delusion was breathtaking. "HOA," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "You sold the house. We have the title. We merged the lots. This isn't Gilded Shores anymore. This is my property. You are trespassing on my land again. If you do not leave right now, I am calling the police." "Call them," she screamed. "Call them. I want them here. I want them to see this." She fumbled in her purse and pulled out a phone. It wasn't the smartphone the police had confiscated. It was an old, cracked flip phone. She dialed 3 numbers with furious stabs of her finger. She put the phone to her ear and glared at me. "Yes, emergency," she shouted into the phone. "I need police assistance immediately at 12 Oak Lane. Yes, I have a break-in in progress. I have returned home to find squatters on my property. They have vandalized the exterior and they are refusing me entry. I am a vulnerable woman and I feel threatened. They are aggressive. One of them is holding a weapon." I looked down at my hand. I was holding a packet of hydrangea seeds. She paused, listening to the operator. "Yes, I am the homeowner. My name is Mrs. Hua. I am the president of the Homeowners Association. These people are criminals. They have been harassing me for years. Send everyone. Send the sheriff." She snapped the phone shut and smiled at me, a terrible, triumphant smile. "Now we wait," she said. "And when they get here, you are going to be the one in handcuffs. You cannot steal a woman's life just because you have a good lawyer. Justice will be served. I felt a vein in my temple start to throb. It was the frustration. It was the feeling of being gaslit on a cosmic scale. I had the deed in my safe. I had the court order. I had the restraining order. I had won. And yet here I was, standing in my own driveway, being held hostage by a woman who refused to accept reality. I pulled out my own phone and called Mark. "Mark," I said, "she is back." "Who is back?" he asked. "Hua. She is in the driveway. She called 911. She is telling them we are squatters." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Mark said, "I am calling Detective Miller. Do not engage her. Go inside. Lock the doors." "I can't go inside, Mark," I whispered. "She is trying to break into the guest house. If I leave, she is going to throw a brick through the window." "Stay there," he said. "I am 2 minutes away." I hung up. I crossed my arms and stood my ground. Hua mimicked me, crossing her arms and jutting out her chin. We stood there like two gunfighters in a western, staring each other down across 10 feet of gravel. "You know," she said, her voice dropping to a conversational tone that was somehow creepier than the screaming, "the pink is hideous. It really shows your lack of class. When I get the house back, I am going to bill you for the sandblasting." I didn't answer. I just looked at the ankle monitor. "Does your parole officer know you are here, Hua?" I asked. She flinched. "That is none of your business. This is a medical device." "You are lying," I said. "You are always lying." She took a step forward, her face twisting. "You shut your mouth. You are a nobody. You moved into my neighborhood and ruined everything. It was perfect before you came. It was orderly. We had rules. We had standards. And you
And your wildflowers, and your parties, and your sheer disrespect. You are a virus." She was close now, too close. I could smell her stale perfume and the desperation on her. "Get back," I warned. "Or what?" she hissed. "You will hit me? Do it. Please, do it. Then I will own everything you have." The sound of sirens cut through the air, but this time it wasn't just one car. It was a cavalcade. 2 cruisers and a massive SUV came tearing around the corner. They screeched to a halt behind Hoa's sedan, blocking the driveway completely. "Thank God!" Hoa yelled, throwing her hands in the air. 4 officers spilled out of the cars. They weren't the local cops we knew. These were county sheriffs. They looked tense. They saw a woman screaming and another woman standing her ground. Hands went to holsters. "Ma'am, step away from each other," the lead officer shouted. Hoa ran towards them, tears instantly springing to her eyes. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. She collapsed slightly, leaning against the hood of the police car for support. "Officers, thank you for coming," she sobbed. "I am terrified. These people, they have taken over my home. I went away for a few weeks to handle a family emergency, and when I came back, they had changed the locks. They painted my beautiful house this horrific color, and she threatened me. She said she would bury me in the garden." The officer looked at me. He looked at the pink house. He looked back at Hoa. "Is this true, ma'am?" He asked me, "Do you live here?" I took a deep breath. I fought down the urge to scream. I fought down the urge to shake him and say, "Do you not know who this is?" "Officer," I said calmly, "my name is on the deed. I bought this property 30 days ago from this woman. It was a court-ordered sale. She is currently out on bond and is violating a restraining order by being here." Hoa gasped. "Lies, pure lies. I never sold it. I would never sell. Show me the papers. If you bought it, show me the papers." She turned to the officer, grabbing his arm. "She is a con artist. She forges documents. She is trying to steal my equity. You have to arrest her. You have to remove her from the premises so I can go inside and take my heart medication." The mention of medication made the officers hesitate. They looked at me with suspicion. To them, it looked like a property dispute. They saw a crying older woman and a younger, defiant woman. "Do you have proof of ownership, ma'am?" the officer asked me. "It is in the main house," I said. "I can go get it." "No," Hoa screamed. "Do not let her go inside. She will destroy the evidence. She will print out fake deeds. She has a machine." The officer held up a hand to stop me. "Stay right there. We need to sort this out." I felt the blood rushing in my ears.
This was happening again. She was doing it again. She was warping reality with the sheer force of her audacity, and the system was freezing up, unable to process the level of crazy she was outputting. "Officer," I said, my voice shaking, "look at her ankle." The officer looked down. He saw the black band.
She is on house arrest, I said. Run her name, HOA. She was convicted last month of filing false police reports and stalking. HOA's eyes went wide. She tried to shuffle her feet to hide the monitor. It is a glucose monitor, she shrieked, for my diabetes. The officer narrowed his eyes. He tapped his radio. Dispatch, can you run a name for me? No, HOA yelled, lunging for the radio. Do not run it. You are violating my HIPAA rights. The officer stepped back, pushing her away. Ma'am, step back. At that moment, another car pulled up. Mark jumped out before it even stopped moving. He was holding a thick file folder. He ran past the police cars and slammed the folder onto the hood of the cruiser. Here, Mark yelled. Here is the deed. Here is the restraining order. Here is the copy of her sentencing hearing. The officer opened the folder. He scanned the first page. He flipped to the second. He looked at the mugshot attached to the restraining order. He looked at HOA. The color drained from HOA's face. She stopped crying. The mask fell. She looked at Mark, and then she looked at me. You think you are so smart, she hissed. You think a piece of paper makes you the owner. I am the soul of this neighborhood. I built this community. You cannot erase me. The officer closed the folder. He looked at his partners. Cuff her, he said. No, HOA screamed. She backed up, tripping over her own feet. You cannot arrest me. I am appealing. I have rights. This is my house. I am the president. Two officers grabbed her arms. She kicked out, her heel connecting with the shin of a deputy. Assault on an officer, the deputy grunted, spinning her around and slamming her against the car. HOA began to scream. It wasn't words anymore. It was just a high-pitched, animalistic wail of rage. It was the sound of a worldview shattering. As they clicked the handcuffs on her wrists, she twisted her head around to look at me. This isn't over, she shrieked. I will sue you. I will sue the department. I will sue God if I have to. You will never be safe. I will always be watching. They shoved her into the back of the cruiser. She threw herself against the window, thumping her head against the glass, her mouth still moving, shaping curses we couldn't hear. The lead officer walked over to us. He handed the file back to Mark. He looked exhausted. I am sorry about that, folks, he said. Dispatch just confirmed. She cut her monitoring bracelet signal about an hour ago.
We have been looking for her. She is going back to county, and I don't think she is getting bail this time. I looked at the pink house. I looked at the ruts in the gravel where the locksmith had peeled out. I looked at my hands, which were still trembling. Is it over? I asked Mark. Is it really over? Mark put his arm around me. He watched the police cruiser drive away, the siren wailing, taking HOA back to where she belonged. I don't know, he said. With her, I don't know if it is ever over. But as the silence returned to the driveway, I realized something. She had escalated. She had come back. She had tried to use the law against us one last time, and she had failed. The pink house was it. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt annoyed. She wasn't a monster anymore. She was just a nuisance. She was a mosquito buzzing against a screen door. I picked up my trowel. I looked at Mark. Grab a shovel, I said. We have gardening to do. And after that, I think we should paint the fence. What color? Mark asked, smiling. I looked at the spot where the police car had been. Chartreuse, I said. Bright neon chartreuse. Because if she is always watching, I want to make sure she has something interesting to look at.
If you think a neon chartreuse fence is loud, you have never heard the sound of a woman whose entire identity is crumbling in real time. You would think that after being arrested twice, charged with multiple felonies, and losing her home, Hua would have taken a moment to reflect. You would think she might have moved to a different state, changed her name, and taken up knitting. But you would be wrong. Because for a woman like Hua, the world does not exist unless she is controlling it, and if she cannot control it, she will burn it to the ground. We held the first annual Donut Hole Independence Day block party exactly 1 month after the incident in the driveway. The date was significant. It was the day Hua's release conditions were officially set. Against all logic, and thanks to a very expensive legal team that her husband had hired in a desperate attempt to avoid a divorce scandal, Hua had made bail. She was out. She was wearing a new ankle monitor, one with GPS tracking that was supposedly tamper-proof. She was staying at a long-term stay hotel 3 towns over pending her trial.
We knew this because the victim advocate from the district attorney's office called us every time HOA sneezed. We felt safe. We had the restraining order, we had the fence. Oh, the fence. We need to talk about the fence. When I told Mark I wanted chartreuse, I didn't mean a subtle lime green hint. I meant the color of a radioactive tennis ball. We found a commercial-grade exterior paint called High Visibility Safety Yellow, and we coated every single inch of that 6-foot privacy fence with it. It was glorious. It was aggressive. It was the architectural equivalent of a middle finger. In the direct sunlight, it was physically painful to look at without sunglasses. And because it was entirely on our private property, blocking the view of our newly acquired pink guest house, there wasn't a single thing the Gilded Shores Homeowners Association could do about it. The block party was in full swing by 2 in the afternoon. It was a beautiful sight. We had set up long tables down the center of our driveway. We had a taco truck parked near the garage. The air smelled of grilled meat and sweet corn. But the best part was the people. For years, the residents of Gilded Shores had lived in fear of HOA's clipboard. They had hidden their garbage cans. They had whispered in their own backyards. But today, they were loud. The lady with the non-compliant dog, whose name I learned was Brenda, was letting her golden retriever run off-leash in our fenced-in yard. The man who had been fined for his red door was wearing a bright red Hawaiian shirt. It felt like the liberation of a small country. We were laughing, eating, and celebrating the end of the reign of terror.
I was standing by the taco truck, holding a paper plate loaded with carne asada, when the music stopped. It didn't fade out. It cut off abruptly. I turned toward the DJ booth we had set up on the patio. The DJ, a college kid named Tyler, was looking confused. He was tapping his headphones. Then, a screech of feedback tore through the speakers, making everyone cover their ears. Testing, testing. Attention, attention residents. The voice was amplified, tinny, and unmistakably familiar. A cold chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the breeze off the lake. I looked toward the end of the driveway, past the chartreuse fence, to the open gate. A black town car was idling there, and standing in the middle of the driveway, holding a megaphone that looked like it belonged to a riot police officer, was HOA. She looked different, and yet exactly the same. She was wearing a white pantsuit that was so bright it rivaled the fence. She had a silk scarf tied around her neck, likely to hide the stress veins. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it pulled the corners of her eyes upward. She looked like a comic book villain who had just broken out of Arkham Asylum to attend a brunch. But she wasn't alone. Flanking her on either side were 2 large men in generic gray security uniforms. They looked uncomfortable. They looked like they had been hired off a Craigslist ad an hour ago, which, as it turned out, was exactly what had happened. HOA raised the megaphone to her lips again. The silence in the yard was absolute. 50 people froze, tacos halfway to their mouths. "This is an unlawful assembly," HOA's voice boomed, echoing off the pink siding of her former home. "You are in violation of Gilded Shores Bylaws, Section 8, Paragraph 3, regarding unauthorized mass gatherings. You are also in violation of noise ordinances, visual decency standards, and common sense." She lowered the megaphone and marched forward. The 2 security guards hesitated, but she snapped her fingers at them, and they shuffled after her. She walked right past the property line. She walked right past the no trespassing sign. She walked onto the gravel of the Miller donut hole. Mark stepped up next to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Do not engage," he whispered. "I am calling 911 again." But I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity was mesmerizing. I walked out to meet her. I stopped 10 feet away. "HOA," I said, keeping my voice calm but loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You are violating your bail conditions. You are violating a restraining order, and you are trespassing. You need to leave. Now." HOA stopped. She looked at me, and then she looked at the fence. She stared at the neon chartreuse planks for a long, silent moment. Her left eye twitched.
A small, violent spasm. "You," she said, her voice shaking without the megaphone, "you have desecrated this land. Look at this. Look at this monstrosity. It burns the retina. It is an assault on property values." She turned to the crowd of neighbors.
She spread her arms wide, like a preacher appealing to her flock. "Look at you all," she screamed, "eating street food like animals, letting dogs run wild. Do you not see what is happening? This woman is a cancer. She has infected you with her chaos. I am here to save you. I have hired private security to restore order since the police refuse to do their jobs." She pointed at the confused security guards. "Officers, seize the sound equipment and tear down this fence. It is non-compliant." The security guards did not move. One of them, a burly guy with a beard, looked at the fence, then looked at Hua. "Lady," the guard said, "you told us we were providing security for a private wedding. You didn't say anything about tearing down fences. This looks like private property." "It is my property," Hua shrieked. She slammed her hand against her chest. "I am the soul of this subdivision. I am the president. I signed the charter. These people are squatters." She turned back to me, her eyes wild. "You think painting my house pink makes it yours? You think a piece of paper from a corrupt judge makes it yours? I know the truth. I know what you are doing. You are running a cult." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. It started with Brenda and her dog, and soon the whole block party was giggling. It was the sound of fear evaporating. They realized finally that Hua wasn't a monster. She was a joke. Hua heard the laughter. She stiffened. She looked around, her face turning a deep, blotchy red. "Silence!" she bellowed into the megaphone. "I demand silence!" I took a step closer. "Hua, look at them. These aren't your subjects. They are your neighbors, and they are laughing at you. Please, for your own dignity, get in the car and leave." "Dignity?" she spat. "You talk to me about dignity? You who planted hydrangeas in direct sunlight? You who painted a historic structure that color of a cheap lipstick? I will show you dignity. I will show you what a true leader looks like." She dropped the megaphone. It hit the gravel with a crunch. She reached into her oversized white purse and pulled out a heavy metal can. It wasn't a weapon. It was a gallon of paint. Beige paint. She marched toward the chartreuse fence. "I am going to fix this," she screamed. "I am going to fix it right now." She struggled with the lid, prying it open with her manicured nails. She dipped a large brush into the thick beige sludge. "Hey!" Mark yelled, running forward. "Stop!" Hua ignored him. She slapped a wet beige streak across the neon green wood.
It looked pathetic, a smear of mud on a supernova.
"There!" she yelled, painting frantically. "Beige, neutral, calming. This is the standard. This is the rule."
She was painting faster now, splashing beige paint onto her white suit, onto her shoes. She looked deranged, a woman in a ruined power suit fighting a losing battle against a neon wall. Brenda, the lady with the dog, walked up. She was holding her phone, recording everything. "Ha, honey," Brenda said. "You missed a spot." Ha spun around, the paintbrush dripping in her hand. "You, traitor! I fined you for that dog. I fined you for your weeds. You should be thanking me. I kept your equity high." "My equity is fine, Ha," Brenda said, "but your blood pressure looks a little high." Ha let out a primal scream. She threw the paintbrush at Brenda. It missed, sealing harmlessly into the grass. Then Ha grabbed the paint can. She heaved it up, intending to throw the entire gallon at the fence. But physics is a cruel mistress. The can was heavy. Ha was wearing heels on gravel. As she swung the can back, her heel slipped. It happened in slow motion. Ha's feet went out from under her. She fell backward. The paint can flew upward, hung in the air for a split second, and then turned over. Gravity did the rest. The gallon of beige paint came down directly on top of Ha. It covered her hair, it covered her face, it soaked her white suit. She sat there in the gravel, a beige statue of defeat, sputtering and wiping paint from her eyes. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of the paint dripping off her nose. Then the siren started. It was almost poetic. For the third time in this saga, the police arrived to a scene of absolute chaos. But this time, they didn't rush in with hands on their holsters. They pulled up slowly, 2 cruisers. The officer stepped out, took one look at the neon fence,
the laughing neighbors, and the beige woman sitting in the dirt, and they just sighed. One of the officers was Bob, the same Officer Bob who had arrested her at the wedding. He walked over, stepping carefully around the puddle of paint. He looked down at Ha. "Mrs. Ha," he said, his voice tired, "you are supposed to be in a hotel in Springfield." Ha looked up. Her mascara was running into the beige paint, creating gray streaks down her cheeks. She looked like a melting candle. "Officer," she whispered, they attacked me. They threw paint on me. It was an ambush." Officer Bob didn't even blink. He looked at the 50 witnesses holding cell phones. He looked at the security guards who were already walking back to their car, and he looked at me. "Did she throw the paint at herself?" he asked. "Technically, she tried to throw it at the fence," I said. "The fence won." Officer Bob nodded.
He reached for his handcuffs. "Mrs. Hoa, you are under arrest for violation of bail conditions, violation of a protective order, trespassing, and vandalism. And I am pretty sure attempting to assault a fence is a new one, but we will add it to the list." He pulled Hoa to her feet. She didn't fight this time. She didn't scream about her rights. She didn't threaten to sue God. She just slumped. The fight had finally, truly gone out of her. She was covered in the very color she worshipped. She had become the beige, and it was not dignified. As they walked her to the cruiser, the paint squelching in her shoes, the neighbors didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just watched. It was almost sad. It was the end of an era. The era of the clipboard was over. But just before Officer Bob put her in the back seat, Hoa stopped. She turned her head. She looked at me one last time. Her face was a mask of drying paint, but her eyes were still sharp. "It is too bright," she croaked. "The green, it is excessive." I smiled. "I know, Hoa. That is the point." They shut the door. The car drove away, and as it disappeared around the curve of the driveway, I looked at the smear of beige paint on my neon fence. Mark walked up beside me. He handed me a taco. "Well," he said, "that happened." I took a bite of the taco. It was delicious. "Do we clean the beige off?" I asked. Mark looked at the fence. He tilted his head. "No," he said. "I think we leave it. It adds texture, a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That you can try to paint over the world with beige," he said, "but eventually the color always wins." We left the paint there. It dried into a hard, ugly lump on the chartreuse wood. We call it the Hoa Memorial Stain. The rest of the block party was legendary. The story of the beige Karen went viral before the sun even set. Brenda's video got 3 million views on TikTok in 24 hours. The comments were brutal, but the best part wasn't the internet fame. It was the aftermath. Hoa didn't get bail again. The judge revoked it entirely. She spent the next 6 months in county jail awaiting trial. Her husband, realizing that his wife had become a national meme and a liability to his business, filed for divorce. He sold the pink house, our guest house, to us for $1, just to be rid of the headache of the boundary dispute. So now we own it all. The donut hole is complete. I am sitting on my porch right now writing this. The baby is sleeping in the nursery, the room that used to be Hoa's surveillance center. The walls are a soft yellow. The window is open. I can see the chartreuse fence glowing in the twilight. It is quiet. There are no sirens. There are no clipboards.
But sometimes late at night, when the wind blows through the trees, I swear I can hear a faint, ghostly whisper drifting from the direction of the county jail. It's not in the palette. But I just smile, close my eyes, and go back to sleep. Because in my neighborhood, we don't have a palette. We have a life. And it is colorful, chaotic, and completely, wonderfully ours. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with the fence.
6 months later, we were sitting in the fluorescent lit courtroom of the County Superior Court. This was not the small municipal hearing where Hua had been granted bail the first time. This was the big leagues. The air conditioning was humming and the room smelled of floor wax and old wood. The gallery was packed. It wasn't just Mark and me. Brenda was there, wearing a shirt that said Dog Mom. The man with the red door was there. Even the locksmith she had screamed at had shown up, sitting in the back row with his arms crossed. We were all waiting for one thing, the final sentencing. When the bailiff opened the side door, the room went silent. I had prepared myself to see Hua. I thought I knew what to expect. But the woman who shuffled into the room, shackled at the wrists and ankles, was a stranger. Gone was the white power suit. Gone was the black funeral dress. Gone was the helmet of hairspray that defied gravity. Hua was wearing a bright orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. Her hair was gray, not silver, but a dull, flat gray, and it hung limply around her face. She wasn't wearing makeup. For the first time, I could see the deep lines of bitterness etched around her mouth. She didn't look at the gallery. She didn't look at the judge. She stared at the floor, her shoulders hunched, defeated by the weight of her own consequences. Her lawyer, a public defender who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, sat next to her.
Her high-priced legal team had vanished the moment her husband filed for divorce and froze their joint assets. Speaking of the husband, he was there too. He sat on the opposite side of the aisle, 3 rows back, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. He didn't look at Hua once. He was looking at his phone, scrolling through what I assumed were real estate listings in a different state. Judge Harrison entered the room. She was a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose and a reputation for handing out sentences that made grown men cry. She took her seat, adjusted her robes, and looked down at Hua over the rim of her spectacles. State of California versus Hua, the judge read, her voice echoing in the silence. We are here for sentencing on 14 felony counts, including filing a false police report, stalking, assault on a police officer, vandalism, and attempted grand larceny. The prosecutor, Mrs. Rodriguez, stood up. She didn't need to do much. The evidence was overwhelming. But she took a moment to remind the court exactly why we were here. Your Honor, she began, this is not a case of a neighbor dispute gone wrong. This is a case of systematic predatory behavior. The defendant used the emergency services of this county as her personal customer service hotline. She weaponized the police force against innocent families. She forged legal documents to steal property.
And when she was given a second chance, when she was released on bond, she immediately reoffended by assaulting a police officer and vandalizing private property. She has shown 0 remorse. She has shown 0 capacity for rehabilitation. She believes she is above the law. The judge nodded. She turned to Hoa. Defendant, do you have anything to say before I pass sentence? Hoa slowly stood up. The chains rattled. She gripped the table with white knuckles. I expected her to scream. I expected her to lecture the judge about zoning laws or the color palette of the courtroom, but she didn't. She looked up, and her eyes were empty. I just wanted it to be nice, she whispered. Her voice was raspy, like she hadn't used it in days. I just wanted everything to be orderly. They ruined it. They brought the chaos. She pointed a shaking finger at me. She planted flowers in the wrong spot, Hoa said, her voice cracking. It starts with flowers, then it is paint, then it is anarchy. I was the only one holding the line. The judge stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then she leaned into the microphone. Mrs. Hoa, the judge said, her voice dropping an octave. You are not a martyr. You are a bully. You describe a neighborhood with children and dogs and different colors as anarchy. The rest of us call that a community. You attempted to destroy people's lives because of your own pathological need for control. That is not maintaining standards. That is sociopathic behavior. The judge looked down at her paperwork. It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 7 years in the state penitentiary. A collective gasp ripped through the room. 7 years. I felt Mark's hand squeeze mine so hard it hurt. The judge wasn't finished. In addition, you are ordered to pay restitution to the victims in the amount of $150,000 to cover legal fees, property damage, and emotional distress. You are also issued a permanent restraining order. Upon your release, you are not to come within 10 miles of the Gilded Shores subdivision. You are effectively banished from this community. Hoa didn't react to the prison time. She didn't react to the money. But when the judge said 10 miles, Hoa flinched. It was a physical blow. The Gilded Shores subdivision wasn't just where she lived, it was who she was.
The judge had just stripped her of her identity. And then came the final twist. The judge looked over at Hawa's husband's lawyers. Regarding the divorce settlement and the division of assets to pay for this restitution, the judge said, the court acknowledges the prenuptial agreement. Mrs. Hawa, you leave this marriage with what you entered it with, which, according to the documents, is 0. Hawa turned to look at her husband then. For the first time, panic flared in her eyes. Richard, she croaked. Richard, do something. Richard finally looked up from his phone.
He looked at his wife of 20 years. He didn't look sad. He looked relieved. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shrug, and then turned his attention back to the screen. The bailiff stepped forward. Mrs. Hoa, let's go. As they led her away, the shuffle of her orange jumpsuit was the only sound in the room. She passed by our bench. For a split second, our eyes locked. I looked for the fire. I looked for the Karen who had screamed at my wedding, who had climbed ladders to install cameras, who had thrown beige paint at a neon fence. It was gone. There was nothing left but a small, gray, angry ghost. When the door clicked shut behind her, the room exhaled. It was a physical sensation, like the air pressure changing before a storm clears. Brenda let out a sob of relief. The man with the red door started clapping, and the judge banged her gavel, but she didn't look too upset about it. We walked out of the courthouse into the blinding afternoon sun. It was one of those perfect days, the kind where the sky is a heartbreaking shade of blue. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that didn't feel heavy anymore. Mark put his arm around my shoulders. "It is over," he said. "It is actually over." I looked at him. We were survivors of a war we never asked to fight. We had the scars, we had the legal bills, but we also had the victory. "Let's go home," I said. The drive back to the donut hole was quiet. When we turned onto our private road, the sun was hitting the chartreuse fence. It glowed with a radioactive intensity that would have made Hoa scream in agony. But to me, it looked beautiful. It looked like freedom. We pulled into the driveway. The pink house stood there, proud and bright. The hydrangeas I had planted in direct sunlight were blooming, massive heads of blue and purple, defying the horticultural laws Hoa had tried to enforce. I walked over to the fence. The lump of beige paint was still there, hard and crusted on the wood. I ran my finger over it. It was rough, ugly, and permanent. Mark came up beside me, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. He popped the cork, the sound echoing off the lake. He poured a glass for me and one for himself. "To the fence," he said, raising his glass. "To the fence," I replied. We drank. The champagne was cold and sharp. "You know," Mark said, looking at the beige stain, "we could sand that off. We have the restitution money now. We could hire someone to make it perfect." I looked at the stain. I thought about the orange jumpsuit. I thought about the empty look in Hoa's eyes. "No," I said. "Leave it." "Why?" "Because," I said, smiling. "It is the perfect warning. It says, here lies the audacity. And besides, I think the beige really makes the chartreuse pop." We laughed. It was a real laugh, deep and loud, carrying over the water, over the property lines, and into the open windows of the neighbors who were finally truly safe. That evening, I sat in the nursery, rocking my daughter to sleep. The room that had once been filled with monitors and hate was now filled with soft toys and love. I looked out the window at the darkened house next door, Ho's old house, now ours. It was empty. The curtains were gone, the cameras were gone. I thought about Ho sitting in a cell, surrounded by concrete and steel, wearing a color she didn't choose, eating food she didn't order, waking up at a time she didn't set. She had wanted total control. She had wanted to force the world to obey her rules. And in a way, she got exactly what she wanted. She was now in a place where there were nothing but rules. I kissed my daughter's forehead and laid her in the crib. "Good night, Peanut," I whispered. "Sleep tight. The bad lady is gone." I walked out of the room and closed the door. I went downstairs, turned off the porch light, and locked the front door. Not because I was afraid, but because it is my house. It is my property. And for the first time in 3 years, the only thing watching us was the moon. If you take a step back and look at the sheer blast radius of this entire situation, it is honestly hard to comprehend. Hoa had everything. She had a wealthy husband, a massive home, and enough free time to run a homeowners association like a dictator. She could have spent her golden years traveling Europe or drinking wine on her patio. Instead, she chose to declare war on a property line. She chose to throw her entire life into a wood chipper because she could not handle the existence of a wedding tent and some blue shutters. And for what? To protect an aesthetic? To ensure that the neighborhood remained a pristine beige sanctuary? The irony is thick enough to cut with a knife. By trying to force us out to protect her property values, she drove her own property value to zero. She lost her house, she lost her marriage, she lost her freedom. And the neighborhood she tried so desperately to control has never been happier or more chaotic. We actually did a final calculation yesterday. Between the legal fees, the restitution, the loss of her assets in the divorce, and the fines, Hoa's little crusade cost her roughly $4 million. That is $4 million spent trying to prove that she was the main character of Gilded Shores. It is the most expensive temper tantrum in the history of suburbia. I walked past the chartreuse fence this morning. The beige stain is still there, baking in the sun. It has become a bit of a local landmark. The kids in the neighborhood call it the Karen spot. They dare each other to touch it. It serves as a permanent reminder that no matter how much money you have or how loud you scream, you cannot fight the law, and you certainly cannot fight a land survey. We heard through the grapevine that Hoa is having a hard time adjusting to her new accommodations. Apparently, the state penitentiary does not have a suggestions box for the color of the cafeteria walls. There is no manager to speak to, there is no board to appeal to. For a woman like Hoa, that must be a torture worse than the confinement itself. She is trapped in a world where her opinion means absolutely nothing. As for us, we are doing just fine. The pink house is currently being renovated. We are turning the downstairs into a game room and the upstairs into a guest suite for when family visits. Every time I paint a wall a color that isn't beige, I feel a little spark of joy. I like to think that somewhere, miles away, Hoa wakes up with a sudden headache every time I open a can of teal paint. The neighborhood has completely transformed. Without Hoa peering through her blinds and logging license plates, people are actually using their front yards. There are tricycles in driveways, there are basketball hoops.
Brenda even painted her front door a shocking, vibrant purple last week. It clashes horribly with our chartreuse fence, and it is absolutely perfect. The Gilded Shores Homeowners Association still exists on paper, but it is a toothless tiger now. No one wants to run for president. The job is cursed. The clipboard that Hoa used to wield like a weapon is probably sitting in an evidence locker somewhere, gathering dust. The reign of terror is over, replaced by the reign of reasonable neighbors who just want to grill outdogs in peace. There is a lesson here, somewhere, buried under the layers of petty revenge and neon paint. It is about boundaries, not just property lines, but personal boundaries. Hoa thought her rights extended to the horizon. She thought her preferences were laws. She forgot that the world stops at the tip of her nose. She forgot that you can own a house, but you cannot own the view, and you definitely cannot own the people living next door. She tried to ruin a wedding, and instead, she strengthened a marriage. Mark and I went through the fire together. We dealt with police raids, lawsuits, and a woman who weaponized zoning laws. If we can survive Hoa, we can survive anything. In a strange, twisted way, I almost want to thank her. She gave us a common enemy. She gave us a story that we will be telling our grandchildren. And most importantly, she gave us a really nice guest house for the price of $1. So wherever you are, Hoa, I hope you are enjoying the orange jumpsuit. I hope the structure and rules of prison give you the order you craved so desperately. But just know that back here at the donut hole, the hydrangeas are blooming, the music is loud, and the fence is still bright, blinding neon green. And every time the sun hits it, it shines like a beacon of justice. We won. The silence is ours, the property is ours, and the paint color, well, that is definitely ours. If you ever find yourself dealing with a neighbor like Hoa, remember this story. Do not engage, do not fold. Get a survey, get a camera, and never ever underestimate the power of being technically, legally, and absolutely right. Because there is nothing a Karen hates more than someone who knows exactly where the line is drawn.
And if all else fails, just paint something chartreuse. It really does wonders for the soul.